Hello, welcome to Jason Cap. Our guest today is Agnes Dodd. Agnes, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here. Good to meet you.
Yes. So to start off, tell us about your role at RMIT University.
I'm a professor at the RMIT University and their branch in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh City. And we have a business school there alongside with the other schools like engineering and then languages and design. And I'm at the innovation department, and I'm a professor. And we also recently are establishing a new research center on emerging technologies in business, which is great.
So does that stand for something, the letters RMIT?
Yeah, I have a funny story about that because previously I worked at MIT, which is Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and this is Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. So, and I just make a joke about it. It's I've been promoted from the regular MIT to the Royal one.
So when I first got here, I went to a pitch competition at here in District 2, our MIT put on. It was like all day event. They had like I don't say kids, but students from like Australia or different places coming for pitch. It's a pretty nice event.
Say it again.
There was a pitch event I went to about a month ago here.
Oh, okay.
Our MIT put on. That's pretty cool. Those kids like from all over the area, right?
Yes, our MIT has been around here for 25 years. And according to my knowledge, it has been the first Western Vietnam to help their new generations to be more competitive globally. And of course, that education is high quality, high price, but at the same time, it's a pleasure to work there because the kids are really great.
Yeah. So they have branches here in Vietnam, Australia, I think Singapore.
And Spain.
In Spain?
Barcelona, yeah.
Oh, that's kind of random.
Well, I don't know. I haven't been, I wasn't there when people made the decisions, but
Yeah.
I think they really want to collaborate with the kind of closest regions or the closest continents. Yeah.
So next, talk about your time at MIT. You got your degree there, right? Or did you teach there?
Say it again.
At MIT, did you teach there, or that's where you got your degree?
Oh, MIT, I was a postdoc.
Okay.
So I did my degree in Finland, and then I moved to do my postdoc, which is so I worked in the persuasive cities for sustainable well-being.
I'm guessing it's not easy to get an MIT at any level, right? Can you talk about that process?
I would say so that the life is a game of probabilities. It's all about whether you are at the right place at the right time and whether you have the right mindset to speak with people. And I think this is how my life has been evolving. And, you know, it's when the probabilities come together, you just get there. And another thing is the big universities and the big names and the big brands, especially in science and academia, it has the same standard distribution. So you can have like a super outstanding talent, which is the one tail of the standard distribution. And you might have just the very common people doing their common things, and they're also at MIT. So it's kind of everything.
So you bring up a great point. I think there's a lot of people out there, they're like, you need hard work, you need luck. Other people say, opportunity comes, but you're not ready for it. Talk about how people should be like set themselves for success to be ready for opportunities, right? And I mean, it's a combination of everything, like hard work, luck, saying yes. I mean, someone might give you a great opportunity, but you might be, oh, I'm not doing that shit. And it could be the best like they see at the time, right?
I would say I have two answers to this. And one is I would rather conclude that success is your perception arrived without acknowledging how much hard work you have actually already put into the journey. You just become who you are, and you tend to forget that you actually have done all of these years of education, practice, self-development. And then it seems to me like, oh, I was lucky. But no, most of the times, I think the luck is just the outcome of very dedicated work. So that's one. And the second thing is what I usually teach in my master classes is that we are the biggest barrier to ourselves. And I think many people know that, especially those who have paid attention to self-development. And as a scientist, I try to break down the problem in the smallest possible unit and then address that. And I think for our human mind, the small unit of barrier could be a thought. So a person can have a thought. So for example, a person can say, I'm very unsuccessful with public speaking, for example. And if the person walks around with that thought, well, Nothing positive can happen. But then over time, I have discovered that if person wants to change at least one thought, there's a recipe. And the thought has to be complete opposite. Most of the people make a failure by placing another thought next to it. They say, I will try, but that doesn't remove the previous one. And that already exists. And then when the time comes and it's a hard, give up the new one about trying successful. So there is a recipe which I call swapping thoughts, and that's one of the simplest one that people can use.
Isn't it crazy how we're all like our own worst enemy, right? I do sometimes, right? And like sometimes I have to remind myself, like, Jason, what you telling yourself internally, like probably not right. Like, quit, like, why do you think we like so many of us like destroy ourselves, so to speak, internally, right? And I have our best interests at heart.
People most likely have seen this ancient wisdom, the dark and the bright and the bright and the dark, yin yang. And when I discovered, I knew it, but when I discovered how easy it used to pretty much everything, it's how we interact with ourselves and how our thoughts travel. Some of the thoughts travel to the bright side, but sometimes step into the dark side. And at the same time, we are sometimes finding ourselves into the darkness, and then we are challenging ourselves and we are stopping ourselves. And I would say if we have more conscious awareness, just thought after thought, and make an observation and say, do I want this thought? Is it really helping me? Sometimes it might be a temporarily just stopping maybe to do some even more crazier stuff. But then, yes, I would recommend, well, basic things. Yeah, paying attention to what are the thoughts. And one awareness that people lack is they think they are creating thoughts. Actually, they just arrive. And then it's either you choose it or not.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. Yeah, I heard like thoughts just come from nowhere, kind of whatever.
Well, that's our human experience. If it decompose the human body, well, we have brain and we have neurons, and neurons are electrochemical interactions. And those operate, most of them beyond our conscious choice. And we then label that, oh, do I want coffee or tea? Oh, it seems like a tea is a good idea. But maybe that just was the neural network saying that, well, you already have too much coffee or something like that.
So you think that plays a part, like maybe free will? Like, do we have free will? Do we not have free will? Is like something, some giant computer in the sky somewhere, that kind of stuff.
That free will question, we recently discussed it with another scientist, actually, just by the way, playing pickleball. And then we just introduced to each other and we just immediately went and say that if we really look down to our biology, well, my perspective would be quite deterministic. So the neural firing has independence from what I think, generally speaking, or if I would interpret that later as my thinking. But these processes happen. But then with logical, neurological, operational system, I have the perception of free will. Because in I could take a coffee or I could take a tea. I did choose. So I think it's a kind of interplay. And most importantly is if we don't over stress about that, but just play with the rules of the game.
So changing subject real fast. So for my short time in Vietnam, it seemed like everyone here loves pickleball. Like, why do you think Vietnam became such a pickleball mecca? It's crazy to me.
It's so crazy that the department head, the business and innovation department where I work, he lost his field for playing tennis because it was taken over by the pickleball. And he was like, what? And I say, well, it's a free market. It's a demand supply, and pickleball is so easy to play, and so many people can do it. It's just a huge wave, and people see it as an opportunity. And Vietnam is a huge market, so many million people, and everybody tries to leverage that. And when we look around here in Tao Dien and District 2, I think there are like a new pickleball court every week, and there are so many.
Easily, easily.
Yeah.
So back in the negative thoughts, I do think there's a positive about that. I think sometimes you can use negative thoughts as motivation to make yourself get better sometimes. But like, how do you balance that with like making sure that negative thought doesn't destroy you versus like helping you like do good things?
Here it is. Well, we again need kind of enough degree of awareness what's going on. And I sometimes label also on my YouTube channel when I speak about motivation. I sometimes say controversial things, and I think that wakes up people and their minds and pay attention. And I say motivation is a lie. Motivation is a lie that we tend societally, individually, collectively to become the barrier against our nature. Because our nature tells us something always that we need to follow the nature, but the nature is smart enough to empower, enable us to live, and the DNA for us to recreate and evolve. At the same time, let's take an example. So waking up early in the morning and going out for a run might seem challenging. Motivational different ways, saying, okay, if I don't do that, I will have an ice cream, or if I some kind of a pleasure. But those are the tricks. What the recipe for success is whether you see value and relevance and benefit for yourself in your life. So that's the direct way of how you can tie it to who you want to become. And if you have answers to those questions and you find that new behavior or the new way of living beneficial, meaningful, relevant, that typically use these words, then you don't need to motivate yourself. It's a strong connection to yourself and your future self. And then you just go.
So let's say someone like they're like 35 years old, they pretty much been average all their life, right? Not performing, not really achieving any goals, like basic 9 to 5 job. Can that person turn a switch on and become like a super performer, like instantly? Like, how does that work?
That's using the formula of swapping thoughts. We can, and that's again, it's how we have evolved so far as a society, but we also, as a scientists, push the boundary, and we find ways how we can be more efficiently helping ourselves to improve our performance. So I speak about hyper performance, and people are wondering, what's that? Because performance is the basic measurement for everything: individuals, musicians, athletes, teams, organizations, key performance indicators. Tradition is if we underperform, there's either lack of knowledge, skills, training, practice. And we can add that, no problem. And I agree, it gives marginal, sometimes larger margin, sometimes smaller margin effect. Saying there's negative thoughts or counterproductive thoughts or biases or prejudices, sometimes beyond their awareness. Those thoughts are limiting or minimizing their performance. So if a person realizes that fact and then has enough awareness to follow the thought train and let the negative counterproductive ones go, and again, that requires person to know where the person wants to develop and where to go. But if that process is established and followed, it's very quick. It's very quick.
So people talk about this like different types of smart, right? There's the meme back in the day where like you can expect a fish to climb up a tree. How do you know, like, how do you figure out what your smart is, right? Like, how do you know, like, because our school system is set up like basically like over again. Like, how do you learn at a young age? Okay, I'm not gonna be smart in physics, but man, I can really like, I'm a master plumber, right? Or like I'm this certain thing, right? How do you give kids enough time to experiment, right? I don't think we do a good job, do a good enough job.
What age do you refer to?
Oh man,
Sorry,
we're no, that's fine. We'll say 13 to 18.
13 to 18. That's, I think, one of the most challenging times when kids themselves try to figure out where and what and how and who they are. And when I remember, as much as I can remember my experience, I was quite introvert. I still am. I just learned how to talk, and I was paying attention mostly to the nature. I was browsing and finding some causalities or phenomena, and my journey from that age into the university was paved by my interests. I just was interested in mathematics, physics, informatics at that time, computer science, and that triggered the teachers to send me to the turn of progress to the stage that I didn't need to do the entry exams for the specific faculty of computer science. And it kind of, and those situations have repeated in my life. So maybe the summary is, and that does apply not only to the kids or the adolescents, it applies to everybody. It's not easy, but it's possible. I think we have a vibration when we look at the things and choices, and even if we consciously scan them, whether I'm going to go for this, that, or that, I think with one of those, the inner vibration or inner happiness of the body envisioning experience with that choice is higher than the others. And if we are able to read that vibration and recognize the difference, that's what indicates that. And there is no other recipe that I have found so far.
Talk about this some too, like the important reinforcement. Like, suppose this kid out there, he's 7 years old. He tells his parents, "Hey, I want to learn to play the piano," and they're like, "Kid, your fingers are too short. I'm not buying you no damn piano. Go do something else, right?" Another kid, they're like, "Okay, your fingers are short, but we'll figure it out, right?" That seems about the points of negative or positive reinforcement for kids or adults, really anyone, really, right?
We are very experiential creatures, and I think as a parents, the best we can do is give the opportunity and just try it. And then, as a additional thing that I have learned in a hard way, and I'm recommending everybody, take an instructor. Everything. I've damaged myself so many sport choices without taking a proper instructor. So I'm always saying, like snowboard, for example, just like the first thing, if you get on the mountain and get the snowboard, it should come together with instructor 100% of the times at the beginning. The same with the piano. If the kid is with the piano, you can let the kid play, but then kid can realize, but the kid is just without any kind of knowledge. If you get somebody to instruct, then it's a completely different experience.
So let's talk about the brain. Time where we understand everything about the brain, or you think that's because we understand like a small amount now, right? Do you think that's just so far past our human knowledge that we never fully understand everything?
Let me help you understand your question. Can you just repeat it, please?
Yeah. So like I'm making this up. I think we only know like 10% of the brain right now, and there's so much we don't know. Like for example, like my thing is like memory, right? You might be somewhere, you might see like this Rubik's cube you have, and it'll bring a memory up, and then all these memories will pop up, but none of them will be related to anything you're thinking about, right? Like there's just so much of the brain we don't know, right?
I'm not sure I have any comment about the percentages. I kind of tried my best to understand the basics of neural networks. And that's why we have the ability to replicate the digital neural networks, kind of resembling the probabilities that happen in our neural networks and how they establish the stronger pathways based on our habits and our choices, repeated choices. And I think I see it because I have my first master is computer science. I see it as a biological computer that has the flexibility to rewire depending on our choices. And then we can most likely establish more neural connections. I don't know how much, because we have the same number of hours per day. And in one set of actions or different set of actions, the brain will adapt to those that we repeat. But and over time, of course, I will remember this one, but the more I will do this one, the weaker will get the neural networks for the other one. So from that perspective, I'm not sure what kind of parameter or what kind of condition should happen to us experience like a stronger or bigger component or bigger use of the same neural network that we have in our brains.
And one thing people don't think they realize, like the more you learn, the more you know, the bigger your brain gets, right? It's not like a limited amount of knowledge your brain has. Like you can have like 5 PhDs, all this knowledge, right? I think people don't realize that.
let's use an example of languages. So there are people that know 1, 2, 3, some people know 10. And then is the question, does the connections in the brain? Yes, it does. But then maybe the person who speaks 10 languages doesn't play piano, doesn't play guitar. And maybe the person speaking 5 languages plays guitar, piano, and saxophone. It's I would attach the time perspective, because things change over time. Everything changes over time. And also the use of the brain and the stronger neural networks, which represent our current active habits and activities, I think that amount doesn't differ much, no matter what we do. If we do something, well, if it's then it's a low activity. But if we compare the number of hours, if the person uses 14 hours of activities, whether that's job or sports or music or teaching or learning, neural networks will be strengthened. And then if the different person does 14 hours something else, I think the same amount of neural networks will be triggered and developed and strengthened.
I also think that your brain like prioritizes stuff for you. Like back in the day, I could probably remember 40, 50 phone numbers, right? But now I don't have to. I can barely remember my kids, like anyone else, my friends. I have to go to the phone, right? So I think your brain like subconsciously like prioritize at least what you don't need to know, right?
That's what the brain does. I think, again, we come back to the very evolutionary foundation, which means our body is designed to survive. The primary mechanism for that is the law of energy conservation. And I call it shortcuts. So our nature has given us to go through life finding shortcuts that would require less energy to achieve what we want. And those shortcuts are not good or bad. It's just where we apply it. And if, for example, let's take the students, and if they make a shortcut by copying something from somewhere else, it's a wrong shortcut. Well, generally, it's a good idea. You optimize for the energy that you invest in making your assignment, but do it in the wrong way. So you apply the wrong shortcut to the wrong place. But everything else, as we develop our environments that don't require us to use our brain for memory, because the computers and technology memorizes things for us and we just ask, then it opened up us opportunities. What do we do with it? And most of the people, or many people, become afraid because they don't know what next. But the next is, if you don't need to remember the phone numbers, it's in your brain to learn how to prompt artificial intelligence to deliver what you want. And I think that's very fair, because it wasn't there before, so you had to remember the phone numbers. Now you don't, so you have new opportunities that didn't exist before.
Yeah, I agree. So this one like this, so like suppose like you go to your computer, right? And this place your computer say like, this operating space using 50% of the energy, just using this. Is there something out there that could say, okay, look at Jason's body, 50% of the energy by the blood system, 5% by this. Is there something that shows like how much energy each part of your body is making, is used on this? I'm just making this shit up.
We are from using biological energy, including chemicals, vitamins, minerals, supplements, and everything else. And those give opportunity for our cells, brain cells, liver cells, kidney cells, blood cells, to do their work. And by the way, we can speak later about the anti-aging science and research, which also pretty much has uncovered that there is a one molecule, and that's the basic fuel for every cell. And if that fuel goes down over years, cells make errors, and this is what we call illness and then aging. And then these scientists say, no, we don't need to go this way. We just supplement it, and the indicators that tells it. Coming back to your question, so I think technically it's possible. Yes, we are electrochemical machines, and then we can read where does our biological energy go to, and how it restores itself during the sleep cycle, and also how by taking the food in, we are delivering the necessary energy to the body parts. And even if we do so, my question would be, how can we use it and for what?
Yeah, great point. So obviously, like human tech has gotten better through the ages, right? I'll go back to where the original tech I think was fire, right? Then wheels, spears, and arrows all through the years right now. I mean, in the last year, we've gone from so tech's getting better and better and better. But I question you is this, like, have we been more smarter though, right? Is the human challenge of man in 2025 on the same level as someone like, the year 10,000 BC, right? Have we gotten smarter? Are we basically the same ape monkey and we just been able to, like, transform?
One of the most important questions that I usually try to highlight also for the students and also for others when I speak in my keynotes. The progression of technological evolution has been exponential. The progression of human evolution has been very linear. And when I sometimes draw it on a whiteboard, it looks very sad. The gap that we have created is enormous. And the conclusion that I try to emphasize and bring everybody's attention to is, while we entertain ourselves with this great technology or make our lives easier, why don't we have only like a fraction of the technology that is designed to help humans evolve at least a little faster with a little faster pace? And this is the work that I've started before in my PhD as social influencing systems, later at MIT as persuasive cities. It's how we can, and this is what I've been talking to the technology audiences. Technologists are great. Engineers will build the algorithms that work faster, more efficiently. The next level is user experience, whether users understand how to use the technology in the most efficient and proper ways. And I say it can be called persuasive, it can be called influential, it can be called transformative, which means the third layer of technology design is designed to help the user intuitively to get better at that technology. And we don't have that. Like, we use ChatGPT, but there isn't anything that would help a random person who first time see it to get into the better prompting. It's not there, but it could be there. It's a technology society with technologies, and would help people to get those technologies to be used more appropriately.
Yeah. Tech is right, if tech startups or whatever, like, what do you really do building like to make us better, right? Like, do we really need another food delivery app? Like, do we really need another, dating app, like, what are you doing like to cure cancer, do something like that, right? There's like no one really doing that. I'm sure there is someone doing moonshots, but man, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, these are big questions. We have evolved as societies, and again, societies differ based where we look on our globe. And at the same time, I think those societies that privilege in terms of developing these technologies can also do the greatest. Sometimes people worry about transparent and we don't know the intent, and that has happened many times, including some big social media companies and everything, that they are trying to leverage attention economy always I remind that users most of the times are intuitively smart and wise. You can have two apps on your phone that kind of look similar and they do the same task. Let's say help you to lose weight or manage your weight. And you would intuitively feel like which app you see, how does it work? What does it account for? What it how it constructs the suggestions based on your inputs or based on the observations. And the other app is just giving you brilliant, shiny, colorful praise and suggestions, but you don't know how it does. And you would naturally tend intuitively to go to the one that you have better understanding with. And that's kind of inbuilt in our relationship with the external world. We look for a trustful and all of those indicators for any app developer who uses that understanding, you would win your users against the other apps. And that's the universal way how we can withstand some people developing technologies with bad intentions, or let's not say bad, but very self-centered intentions.
So let's say there's two people. One person lives in the year 1525, one lives today 2025. They're both like pretty much like pretty smart, super kind of intelligent, they're kind of well off, they know how to get around, they're pretty successful. And they to the secret of time travel, they switch places, right? Coming to 2025 will be more successful. Like which one do you think will be successful? Which one do you think will struggle?
So one is from 2025 and the other one
1525. Basically 1,000 years apart. And they switch places.
I just try to get the number. So which way? Like 1,000 years apart?
Yeah. Yeah, to
Yes.
2025. Or no, maybe it's 500 years. So I mean, you get the point. Like,
yes. And what happens with them?
they
Swap places.
swap places. Yeah, So is a guy from today going back in time would be able to like figure it out? Like, man, this is like like there's no tech here. There's nothing going on. The guy coming to pass here, like we were overrun. Well, they both like kind of be able to figure it out.
That's a really very good question. I never thought about that. I would generally say our nature has given us enough to figure out many things. And now it's just a very interesting comparison. It's rather that environmental setup around the person, because the person who arrives from the more advanced, technologically advanced society back to the more like less technologically advanced would have the superpowers to suggest other people how the things can be done, kind of a fast track for technological development, whereas the person arriving from less technologically advanced years into this would be kind of the learning curve or kind of the adoption. And again, these are great stories or the great examples, but it all as always comes down to the choices of the same person. Like, well, I think regardless of who are these two characters in this story, whether the character is open to self-development and learning, and whether the person is afraid of the things around. I think it's almost like that. No matter where we are in our technological evolution, it's how we choose to relate with technologies.
Yeah. So I think the person like going from the past to today, I think if he can overcome the initial information overload, like cars and spaceships flying and all this stuff, it'll probably take him like about a month to overcome that, right? I think he'd figure it out, right? I think the person on the past were the one who would like struggle, right? Because first of all, most of us now in this generation are fucking soft, right? So first of all, how are you going to solve all the diseases? Like using the bathroom out. And then I'm thinking like he suggests something, right? Are they gonna say, "Yo, witch, you're the fucking devil," right? Like how you overcome that, right?
That's the hardest part, and it still exists in our society.
Yeah,
it still exists. It's everything that is too far from commonly accepted things indicate in large part something wrong with the person. And well, I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. I'm positive, and I think the comparison I usually see here is the visionaries, the people who have the vision. Most of the times, when the vision is too far have today, this is the time when people, you are too crazy. But then the visionaries are different because they keep doing it, and then they get some followers that start to believe, well, yeah, it vision as well. And then this is how great products and services emerge. As an example, the one that we currently have on the table as Apple, for example.
So what's your take on Elon Musk Neuralink, right? Good thing, bad thing? I mean, like, I think the fear is like, everyone gets a Neuralink and then Elon Musk has mastered cloud kind of stuff, right? I mean, I don't think that'll happen, but like, and I know they did an interview with Joe Rogan with a guy who's like a paraplegic. He has the first Neuralink. just talk about how it's improved his life, everything's better, right? So yeah.
As a scientist, I'm happy that we have high-speed neural networks in our brain. For scientific reasons, that's a great step forward to understand or help understanding how our consciousness emerges from the electrochemical networks in our human brain. I'm really looking forward to that, because only when we will understand, or at least closer understand, how our conscious awareness that we use today, right here, emerges from this 2.5 kilograms jelly-like mass that kind of signals with the trillions of connections and electrochemical, all these activities, and now we speak. And though that chip in the brain is a stronger access. Fun as a scientist, I'm looking forward to have progress in this. For general society and the future, we face this: who has the access and what is their intent. And we know that bright in the dark, dark in the bright, and some people will use it for their dark or self-centered intentions, and some people will be very bright and say, okay, let's make early diagnosis about the person having something or prediction. I think that's a kind of a separate big question that is independent of technology. I would say a way that people say, oh, it's AI ethics. And I say, this is the way how we fool ourselves in society. It's not AI ethics, it's human ethics.
So let's talk about, I think it's called genetic splicing, right? I think there's new tech out there where you do genetic splicing and you can do something like you prevent like a kid from getting cancer, prevent diseases, or I'm not thinking worse. I won't say worst case scenario, but concern like maybe a 200-pound blonde kid with an IQ of 97, right? And I think it's all that is like on either happening on the cusp of happening, right? But like talking about ethics, like is that really our place to like quote unquote play God or like and what and way above the have-nots, right? Obviously, have some money can pay for the stuff. Have-nots can't. So you just like Red Tim, like creating super races, super people, and then everyone else like fucking lowly down and like just paupers people, right? I don't know. Like this, a lot of tough questions people answer. I think.
Yeah, I really haven't thought about going that far, but the picture that you painted, I think it's possible already today. It's just that collectively as a human race, we have decided not to go there rapidly without knowing the details, what happens behind the closed doors. Perspectives. One, that I think as a scientist, what are the possibilities and what are the building blocks that we are playing with? And gene engineering has been already around with different mammals and helping ways how we can understand our DNA or recover. And there's one study lab where not only they worked on making the blind mouse see by putting the right signals into the right parts of the brain, and the other was that when mice get this Lyme disease, and you can even make the mice resistant or immune. But then when the mice meets another one, they make an offspring, that they have two DNA strings and they come together to the offspring, and offspring, one string has the protection to the Lyme disease and the other one doesn't. But these scientists made it not only that the one string coming from the immune parent, not only it has the protection, it also has the part of the DNA sequence that later the whole sequence from one DNA string to the other one that comes from the other parent. And I was like, that's impressive. And that's, I'm telling the story, which is 5-6 years old already. So that means, yes, on that trajectory, when we see the possibility to create the society or organisms any way we want, playing with the DNA, technically it's possible. And I think it's, again, want to see ourselves as societies. And unfortunately, if we look out to the world, seeing all the crazy stuff's happening, even in the developed and Western cultures, let's say, or well, somewhere where the people actually have enough consciousness, they still do um, unacceptable to me things, and we need to address that first. And if that's addressed and solved, then we will not get into this replication of the same, just at a different scale and using different technologies.
So you consider yourself a scientist, correct?
Yes.
So not based on like any kind of scientific, organization or credo, but for you personally, what do you feel is your responsibility to like the human race as a scientist?
I would welcome, I would welcome, and here it is. I see our societies, especially if you look at the science, scientists are most of the times very easy to kind of understand and read. They use the methods and they discover, and there's a new contribution to the understanding about ourselves, about technologies, about the interactions and everything else, materials, stars, galaxies, and everything. But then in our societies, we have rules and regulations and policies, cultures, religions, traditions. And those oftentimes are too far removed from the science. And they're based on the history and based on other things. And most of the challenges that we currently have are not related with our scientific discoveries, but rather with these other aspects that are there for their own reasons, for the historic reasons, maybe for other. And I'm not saying that there is the right way how we would need to be on. There's plenty of room for the culture and all the other aspects that are very important for societies. But if we are able to ourselves, and if there are ways that are healthier at all of the human levels, then those to be perceived and accepted and maintained as the primary ones. Let me give you one practical example that I give in my talks, because when I speak about persuasive cities for sustainable well-being, then somebody always asks me, who are you to tell what is healthier for us? And I say that if you as a community decide whether this cheese is healthy and that cheese is not, I can support your society with technology that gives you instant feedback loops, supporting that all of your society gradually shift over from the cheese. That's all I do. And then they say, oh, but how can we know exactly? Do you ask them the counter question? I say, what in our experience decides whether that's healthy or unhealthy cheese, or tasty or or not tasty cheese? And the people typically say, I do. And I say, then can we look closer exactly in you? What is that? And then people typically like stop and think, and they're puzzled, like, but it's me. And as a scientist, say, well, let's go to the most fundamental building block in our body. It's a human cell. And if the human is coming in sees it as the positive, energetic, supportive, giving them more energy, that's good. And if anything, substance or any other thing that comes into your body and it's a burden for a biological cell, then I would classify it as an unhealthy. And that also is another kind of a perspective that only I think scientists can bring into the societal debate. Because otherwise people say, I think this is healthy and this is unhealthy. No, let's ask our biology, the cell.
So next, let's suppose there's like a kid out there or kids 6 to 18, right? And they have interest in science. They have at it, or it's natural to them. What advice you have for this kid, and probably better their parents, to like to keep on encouraging this scientific intrigue and like maybe make this occur later on?
I well, I will start with the big answer and then come down to the kind of a level of a 6 to 18 years old kid. I think many people are lost in lives because they don't have that answer to the existence for myself. It's longevity. And the simplest answer is if you are a writer, the longer you live, the more you can write. If you're a medical doctor, the longer you live, the more you can cure. If you're a scientist, the longer you live, the more you can discover. Of course, that applies to bad intentioned people as well. But nonetheless, I'm optimistic. I look at the bright side, and generally, we are doing quite well on this planet so far. So that would be the longevity. And then what would be then for the kids? How can you, from the early age, do everything in your life, make choices that would help you to live longer? Whether that's psychological, physiological, neurological, whatever that is, how you can see yourself going through life the longest possible. And then that perspective will certainly filter out a lot of negative, unnecessary choices early in life. It would be just like, oh, it's instead of a kid thinking, oh, do I like it or not? The question will be different. Oh, does this contribute to my longevity, or this is kind of shorten my lifespan? Oh, of course, it's a very big question for a kid, but parents can, and just by manifesting and saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna take this, I don't know, salad today because that contributes to my longevity. Like, just like, again, as an example, funny example.
So next part of the question, let's suppose someone's like 1823, they're really good at science, they're top, they're top of their class. What advice you have for this person, like, to get the best out of his ability and to be like a scientist, have a scientific career?
Well, if people already have achieved or they're achieving, the next is communication. That's what you do, Jason. That's what you do. And we should, as a scientist, do it much more profoundly, clearly. And I think there has to be even, and there are people and organizations that are trying to help scientists to communicate their work. But I would rather invite our scientific community to really become or establish that as a part of ourselves, not as the outsourcing that there is some company that does take your publication journal, a 5-minute video, that's fine. But I think if the scientists themselves would have that perspective from day one, that I'm interested in studying this. And the next question will be, if I discovered that, and if I tell about my discovery to the society, would they appreciate that? Would that bring any sense, meaning, and value to them? I think there could be like a free of where our scientific effort goes, because aspects of our society and industries have been outdated. Peer review process, the journals and everything, and even including education. I sometimes, as I said, I sometimes say things that are kind of controversial, but I believe if we are not honest to ourselves and we just go with inertia and without acknowledging where exactly are these things that are for them. So for example, if we speak about education, as long as industry will be based on requiring standard graduation diplomas, there will be universities that produce standard educational diplomas, and there would be no kind of big need for them to rearrange themselves. At the same time, students can learn anything and go and do their things without diplomas. So it's kind of a transformative times, but it transforms gradually and slowly because of the education itself, but because the rest of the society, the industry is still based and driven by that old paradigm. Okay, you need to have this diploma to convince us.
So hopefully I asked this question right, but like, are scientists around the world looked at equally? For example, suppose a scientist in France does a paper on XYZ. You say Bolivia does basically the same paper XYZ. Do people think, okay, this guy from France has to know more because he's from France versus the guy from Bolivia? Or like, are scientists, as long as the skills and degrees are about the same, looked on upon equally?
Science should very equal playground. Science, by definition, is we are exploring us and our relationship with the world and the world. And I always, when somebody raises a kind of a big question about science, I remember there's science communicators. One of them is Neil deGrasse Tyson. Many people have heard or
Mm.
seen him, and he is funny and great and knowledgeable. And one thing I think he, and also some of his colleagues from the cosmology and astrophysics, sometimes when they are happening to give a talk at the convention, which is connected to religion, and there are many scientists that are religious as well. But the one story that really I think just makes sense is that if anything happens on the planet and all the books are gone, destroyed, anything left. So scientific books will come back as they were. Sooner or later, we'll recreate all the laws of physics, all the understanding of the gravity, speed of light, everything. But all the other stories in the other books will be different. And I think that's why if you look at the science, and if the science is done properly, we are just pushing the boundary of understanding who we are and how we live and what's around us. And the better we understand us and things and interaction, the better we can design the next product, services, and societies.
What do you think is going to be out in the future? What future tech's out there you think that we haven't even thought about? Right, some time travel, like what's the thing on Star Trek? You like beam people back and forth on the holodeck, right? You know, like what's some kind of far out technology you think might be coming up, or that you want?
I see the pathway or the evolution in such a way between humans and technology. Let's look at the simpler, older computers. They didn't have touch screen. So we had to use more like a remote devices to interact. But now we have all technology crawls closer to us. Even proximity gets as close as we can have something in our glasses. We can have the air ability to interact with our fingers. And we even have the possibility now to have the chips in our body somewhere in different ways. So I see that we get closer and closer. Proximity between humans and technology gets smaller and smaller. I think it's inevitable. It's going to get to the point when we will fuse to some degree. We will get very strong connections in some areas that we accept as being ethical or being helpful, where we are very integrated with technology. How exactly? I don't know, but generally we are going that direction. And I'm not afraid of that, because what is artificial intelligence is a technologically strong agent that initially has looked at the intelligence that people have created to make more sense. Over time, that agent not only is able to look at what people have created, but also what people create on a daily basis. Just observe how they use some technology, look at their behavioral footprints into the log files, and create more understanding. And they look at all of the cat pictures, and then they can develop the computer vision. So it's already in the example, it's an expansion of our intelligence where humans and technology co-create and expand or united intelligence. So therefore, how do we live in that united intelligence? How much is, or how I am not able to tell at the moment, but I think it will be just getting more what we want to achieve with this. And this is also an important moment when people are asked this question, what do you want to achieve with this? What do you want to achieve with this artificial intelligence? Oh, I just want it to be very smart. Why? What exactly? Why do you need this? So I think, yeah, most of the times I would say, let's continue build powerful technologies, but with an understanding, why do we do this? Why do we do this?
Yeah, I know on Joe Rogan's podcast, he talks a lot of science a lot, and Joe Rogan, his theory is like the last generation of humans be all 100% human, right? He believes like next generation, like neural links, integrated technology, robotic arms, data processing, right? And then if that happens, like, are we still humans though, right?
Say it again.
So if we do get integrated all this tech, like you have Neuralink, robotic arms, all this stuff happening, right? Are we like, are we still human? Or are we just robotics, a combination? Like, and like, are we basically like the last generation of like 100% biological humans before we like transform to quote unquote the Borg or something like that, you know?
I would continue that being humans evolving and creating intelligence in the first place. I have one slide in my talks, and those people who are going to go and they will see in one of my talks, I use it. The first, I'm simplified the evolution of intelligence, but I said, okay, here is the timeline, the time goes, and then the intelligence improves. So the first thing when the ancient human-like creatures met, what was the first ways for them to exchange any kind of basic intelligence? Gestures. They were like, oh, okay. The next, okay, drawings on the cave walls. Okay, we draw something. The next is speaking, then writing, then printing, then libraries, then internet, artificial intelligence. It's kind of and when that is clearly seen by the society, to be afraid that AI is an alien thing and will same perspective. If we have a currently society where we don't have chips, let's say most of us don't have chips, but maybe we'll have society that has chips, but also we had the society without cars. So we also place this technology around us. Yes, there is a proximity like TV, but also there was a proximity towards the desktop computer, but that proximity got smaller with the handheld devices and with the touch screen, and the same with the chips. So we evolve by minimizing the distance between us and technology. And then later, if we have technology not only on us, but in us, it's still a combination of these two parts where the human brain manifests and represents the human intelligence, let's say the biological intelligence. And then we have the digital intelligence, which is either in a close proximity or it's connected directly to it. And then I don't see a big dilemma there. It's we become different.
So next, talk about the importance of like background, what their field is, the importance of them doing the best at a minimum, becoming an average public speaker. What's the talk about why it's important for people, regardless of what they do, their age, their background, to at a minimum become an average public speaker?
I'm just not getting to the first part. Sorry.
So regardless of what your age is, right?
Yes.
How old you are, what your background is, you're a scientist, football player, et cetera, the importance of becoming an average, at the minimum, an average public speaker.
To become an average public speaker, but what?
But why should they become an average public speaker at a minimum?
Okay, understood.
Like most people are scared of it or whatever,
Yes.
like why should you like train yourself at a minimum, not become great or the greatest public speaker, like don't become the Barack Obama, like be able to get in front of people and give an average talk.
Yes, I wasn't good at the public speaking myself. I was an introvert, as I said, and I went through the journey of pushing myself through the new experiences. And everybody, or most of the people, have their own wisdom, their own stories. And I think we as a society, we have evolved sitting around the bonfire and telling stories. And everybody has their own. We cannot tell which story will be more important or less important, better or worse. And that's another thing which I have shifted in my vocabulary. Most of the people, when they label certain things, which is quite common or bad, I stopped using these two words. And especially when I speak with kids or younger generations, I use different. I said it's appropriate or inappropriate. It's a good fit or bad fit. In the same way, I think everyone who has their own experience, that experience and that story, if that story is told, can be very well helping and resonant. I think somebody else's life will to somebody else. So That's as another way how our intelligence manifests itself. So if people have lived all their lives, but they have never told anyone except their maybe partner or their family, well, that's gone. Is very foundational for us.
And you give them like 4 TEDx talks, right?
Yes.
So I think everyone knows what TEDx talk is, right? They know the advantage, but what did you personally get out of it, right? Does the TEDx speaker get some out of it? Like it's like, I don't know, increasing revenue, more brand awareness. Like what do you, of course you give a TEDx talk to like give people your knowledge and make the world a better place, but what do you personally get out of it? Is it worth the time and effort? Because I'm sure it's not easy to apply and the whole process can be easy, I'm sure. So what did you get out of it?
The best thing that everyone can get out of going through the TEDx experience is they have very high quality standards for preparing you to communicate. That training itself is worth it. And no matter what happens later with your talk, whether people watch it 1,000 times or 10,000 times or 100,000 times, you have become a much better communicator. And that's inbuilt into the TEDx quality standards. And that's what I got out of it. Because even if you know your material very well, that doesn't mean you're a great communicator. And that was the same with me. I was like, okay, I know all this stuff, but then I talk about whatever comes into my mind. TEDx makes an effort where they assign a person who is with you, listening to you, and you repeat it and rehearse it over and over again. And there is just a common person with you for 2-3 months. Oh, what was that? Oh, is that important? Oh, what did you mean by this? Oh, well, that transition really, I didn't catch that. And it's valuable. It's frustratingly valuable. And I went through that process 4 times. Well, after that, you become somebody else, and you even by selecting the slides, you know upfront you like all of your 37 slides, but there is no room for 37. And that's another thing that I would like also maybe discuss with you this time or next time. It's the critical thinking. That's the critical thinking is one of the outcomes of this. You look at the and you allow to delete some of the great content to give possible content. And that's also requires very, very kind of good execution of critical thinking.
So speaking of critical thinking, that is one of my questions for you. It's like, how do we as a human race maintain our critical thinking skills if AI can do everything for us, right? If ChatGPT can do everything else, right? Like, yeah.
So critical, from my perspective, and I've been speaking about this for the last year, especially also with the students. Students come to the classroom and I say, well, with all of this technological capacity and capabilities, you can do so many things even without coming to the class. And by the way, in our school, it's not mandatory, so they can have this blended learning, which is very high quality standards and everything. But then I recommend students to come to the class to get the benefit from the teacher, from the interaction with the teacher and with the other students. But I always say, no matter what knowledge you can acquire during the course, one of the best skills that you can develop and the teachers can help you to develop is critical thinking. Why? Because the amount of knowledge is expanding and there will be endless for you to find different relatable and relevant knowledge for whatever questions you will have later in life. An ability, and that's my definition of critical, to choose the best fitting knowledge to your present problem. And even your problem can change over time. And you, even if you think and you name the problem the same way, it can be that it has changed and the different solution from the old alternatives can be the best fit. And your ability to recognize that your challenge has changed and also solutions have evolved over time, and your ability to select the best, the most appropriate, the best fitting alternative for your current question or challenge, that's the highest degree of critical thinking. And because knowledge will be always available and it will be expanding. It's just, have you capacity to overcome your human bias to think that the first answer is the best, and then go and dig deeper through the, for example, prompting the AI to get to the most fitting and the most appropriate alternative for you. And that's the critical thinking.
Why do you think so many people like rush to find the answer versus like really taking the time and figuring out, is this actually the right problem I'm solving?
Shortcut. It's a shortcut. It's energy conservation shortcut. And it works not only for the person who makes that quick decision saying, oh yeah, that makes sense, let's go with it. We have so many examples when there are, like, let's say 3 people. There is, let's say, department head, and there is one professor coming to the department head and said, you know, this new standard of using the digital books, I think is the best. And then the department head says, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And then the other person comes in. And then when the other person comes in, it can be so scientifically validated with all of the support and the data that's telling that, no, these paper books are actually, in some cases, much more valuable because in the class they can do this. Too late. The first information bias already has. And because people don't want to change their minds. It requires energy. So
next, talk about hyper performance and human artificial intelligence.
yes, so we already discussed that performance is the foundation how we can see us becoming better at everything we do, individually, collectively, societally. And if you look at the organizations as an example of that, then most of the times organizations have trainings, some knowledge sessions. So assuming that people when have more, they would perform better. And I say you can have the most advanced AI developers in your team, but if you have recently changed your office location from a very nice downtown high rise to your outskirts somewhere with a view on the next building, which is ugly. And then the same people with the same skills, with the same training we have done different. I'm just giving an example, different location, like it here. And that's just the one thought. And there can be many thoughts like this. And if those thoughts are there, they take away the energy from their performance. So that's the foundation of understanding hyper performance. It's not to add anything else. Yes, you can add when it's needed, but most of the times what is neglected is that our human nature includes all of these thought patterns that are counterproductive. And if they are known, and if they are monitored, and if they are in part of the process to be captured and minimized as much as possible, even on the individual level, it's not necessarily need to be management or leadership role. It can be management and leadership educate and create that culture of hyper performance by making everybody aware what's going on and just being that part of our day-to-day work. So that's one. And human artificial intelligence is that phenomena where we don't expect AI to do the miracles before we have told AI who the humans are. Most of the times, AI algorithms perform brilliantly certain tasks. But have we had enough understanding of how the human, especially human change works? And I speak about neurological and sociological levels, because if a person wants to change, there has to be changes happening, like habit changes, the neural network changes. Whether the neural network can change in certain times of the day, not always, because physiological state sometimes is so low energy, tired, or something else. It prevents that energy to go to develop a new habit. Psychological, we just say to ourselves, anytime soon, it for happening. And sociological, you see other people saying the same thing. They say, oh, I failed, so what to be successful? But then if we have understood how we can counteract and then instruct artificial intelligence how the humans change or don't change, or where these changes can be supported, only then we can expect AI to be effectively, first of all, seeing whether humans change or don't, or whether they have these barriers in their heads, and then react to that. We can give feedback. So let me give you an example. People, and that's already, I will start with the one study that is done by one of the MIT units. They were able, again, that's a very narrow AI, looking at the number of characters per email. Without context, without language, without anything, just characters per email, like an average number per email per person in the organization. And the significant drop in the number of characters per email was a significant predictor that people will going to leave the company. They will just resign and go somewhere else. Very technical thing, but as an example that there's something changed reflected in the number of characters, and that told in this case.
I mean, it makes sense because we usually people will leave a job, they get less engagement, they less like to put ideas out in the email or whatever. So yeah, I can definitely see that happening. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
And there are many other things. AI can be just like I don't want to use any kind of significant words, but and people sometimes are afraid, oh, I'm monitored, or I'm like somebody's watching me. But well, those systems that people use at work, technology driven, everything you do leaves behavioral footprints in this digital world, and all of those behavioral footprints can be looked at and analyzed by AI real time. And if anything deviates significantly from what has happened before, it can raise a red flag and give it to today to the management. But later in the future, if those things are commonly known and they repeat, the AI can diagnose, oh, maybe because we changed this CRM system for our salespeople, and this is evidence that sales having hard time to accept it. And that means, why don't we apply again the same feedback loop where we show that we have no problem. They have adapted, engaged, they are reporting all their CRM calls within the next 20 minutes after they've done that, and give this social dynamic about others having no problem. And then the people like, most of the times people get stuck with their own bias. They think, oh, I don't like it, so everybody doesn't like it.
Talk about something that you're optimistic about, and then
I'm optimistic about AI being the mirror of our human nature with the highest possible resolution. We are having hard times seeing ourselves clearly. And the example of that is ethics, human ethics, and how tools have been mirrors, because with a hammer you can hit the nail or you hit the person, and that now instead of hammer we have AI. But what's the difference is the grand with how high resolution we can look back to our deepest corners of our human nature, where previously if we had very standardized technology, some bad intentions, people with bad intentions could still use it, but not to that degree, not to that extent. Now with AI, they can get more sophisticated. So the more sophisticated darkness is revealed through these powerful tools. So I'm optimistic about that, because on the one hand, the themselves, but the good part of it is in technologies, everything is recorded. So there is no way to hide it. Before that, you could just throw the hammer into the ocean and game over. But now technologies will keep that record. What I'm pessimistic about is it's not about AI. It's I'm more optimistic about human nature trying to minimize the darkness of itself, like, or try to, or human race to minimize the exposure or manifestation of the dark part. Of course, it's it's not that we have to remove it. It's impossible to remove it. It's encoded in the DNA through the dark ages. It's in us. But our evolution, even comparing to the societies 200, 300, 500 years ago, tells us that generally we are on the positive track of living more and more in the bright side of the human nature. And I would wish that AI and the appropriate and meaningful way of using AI would help generally the manifestation of the dark side of the human.
Yeah, I could be wrong. I agree with you. I think like human race now, we're way better, like spiritually, physically, like all those kind of ways. I think we're just better 900 BC, right? I mean, back then there's like do all kind of horrendous things that people tortures. Like, nah, I think of course could we get better? Obviously we can, right? But I think we're just as a human race, we're like a better place in the area.
Say it again.
I think we're just in a better place. I think we're just better people, period, versus even 200, 300 years ago.
I would, well, it can be philosophical, but I think we have gotten our environments around us to be more comforting and more advanced. And that triggers us to act and behave in a correspondence with that, which means by definition, yes, our societies have evolved relationship with ourselves, with the societies and others. Nonetheless, the amount of negative, unwanted, unhuman actions that are still present, it's just
Now, and I will say, if like there's no more food in the grocery store, the system shut down. I mean, within 2 or 3 days, we're going back to our basic human selves, and like man eats man, so to speak. Man eats dog, whatever the case may be, right? It doesn't take long to go back to where the dark side, so to speak, right?
that's what I'm saying. Also, sometimes just to wake people up. Brightest person today, living in the comfort and living with the everyday life, work, and everybody else. If that person put in different conditions, it can be very harsh conditions. At certain points, the DNA, the sequence of the DNA that remembers the dark ages will be triggered.
Yeah.
Will be triggered. That's who we are. And that's why I believe that if we help ourselves to keep evolving and use the powerful technologies and AI to help us evolve by even, because we know our DNA seeks evolution and seeks where to go and how to go. And if we can help it to go faster towards the direction where we co-live with everybody in the human race in a most meaningful, healthier way, and also see the technology as a part of that society, then we have a better chances of minimizing the darkness and living in a positive ways.
I mean, way back the day, we were like hunters gatherers. We'd walk around for days, no food. We might kill an antelope or deer. Like designed that way today, right? Even though we have access to food all the time, we're designed. Hey, you got to eat all this food because you don't know where the next meal's coming from. Even though we can eat like literally 24/7 now, right?
Well, yes. So I think it's very important to know who we are deep down from all of the kind of like day-to-day experience. And I agree with you. Day-to-day experience is determined by the environment and by our personal choices and our personal development and all other kind of like closest factors. But if anything significant changes in those factors, different parts, the history of DNA will be triggered. And it's very important to understand. It's also important when we design certain things, because if we design a new environment, new district in a city, or a new experience for, I don't know, even for bad people in a prison or something like this, it's anything significantly changed into these environments will trigger different responses from a different history in our DNA.
So I know like for genetics, like your height, weight, stuff like that, genetics gets passed down. But if stuff like suppose your father and grandfather are both known for their bravery, right? Does that kind of genetic stuff get passed down too? Or like suppose your father and grandfather and family like they're kind of like kind of cowardly people, right? And they're always afraid, always would run from fights. Is that genetically stuff passed down too?
I don't know the answer to this question, but what I think is, and this I would rely on the basics that has been discovered by scientists. That means our choices in life determine 80% of how we experience it, and 20% is the hardcore DNA sequence, the way we look, but the way how we experience life, our longevity, and health parameters and other things are influenced by our choices and environment. And environment can be also my father and grandfather, believe them or not, or do we repeat what they said or not? And I don't have knowledge whether how big is that effect, or how big is the percentage that we can relate or refer to in those situations as additional information in our DNA for the next generation. I think DNA sequence is so long, as people say, like 9 times to the moon and back. And another statistics that people are surprised to learn, but I think it's another thing, and other scientists, is that how large percentage of our DNA is common with a chimpanzee, for example. I do this test with a student. What's the percentage that common between the human being and chimpanzee? And then, of course, people have guess any number. But when I say it's 98.5, everybody's like, hmm. And sometimes I go the other way and I say, what's the percentage of DNA that we share in this room? Mm. Like that's number is shared by all of us that we sit here. And of course, everybody looks around and we look very different, and different nationalities and everything else. And I say 19 numbers can be fluctuating, depends which scientists speak about it, but that's like huge number. And then the 0.4 even account for the gender differences and everything else, especially when it comes to all these crazy debates about pronouns and genders and everything. Well, if we look at our nature says anybody of us, including all the genders and everything, it's 99.6. So what's the problem? So the nature knows what it does. It's just that we look at these 0 point something differences and make it very egocentric.
So what is MIT Media Lab? And are you still involved with that?
So MIT Media Lab is extremely unique place. It's an academic unit that is so closely connected to creating innovation that help companies and societies progress. And just to share that what work the MIT Media Lab does is it has to be a combination, or at least one of the three. It has to be so unique that nobody else is doing it. So it's a very high quality filtering mechanism. The other is impact. So it has to be impactful to society, to industries. And the third, sometimes because it's technology, sometimes you cannot really prove the first or the second, whether that's unique or impactful. Then if technology does magic, then it's assumed that over time that magical thing that technology does will find its application somewhere. The aspect is that there are companies directly becoming the members of the academic lab, which is unique. Well, there are similar examples, but the degree that is happening at the MIT Media Lab, again, I can tell you, when the founder Nicholas Negroponte twice a year comes on the stage, where in the big auditorium sit all these representatives, the leadership teams of these members, to listen to what new innovations have been produced. He says, well, while in your industries, most of the times your research and development projects cannot really fail. You need to work everything so everything gets some degree of success and profit. Whereas we can continue doing research, continue innovate, and bring these innovations in a way, in a fashion that is not possible anywhere else. And I think this is a very powerful message. And also what I wanted to say is, thanks to his and others' great communication skills. It's powerful when scientists and scientific community can communicate in such a powerful and persuasive ways that it brings the science as close as possible to the industry.
And as a professor, you're actually teaching classes, correct?
Yes.
And so when you teach in class, you have a group of students. Like, how do you like figure out like this student needs this student interaction? Like, because obviously all of you have different things, different backgrounds, different smarts, different whatever the case be. Like, how do you figure out to make sure you give each student the best experience possible while taking your course?
Again, I use the same nature-given, let's say, approach, which is shortcut. So my shortcut to the student success is a belief that just like students, many other people will be the most successful if they don't have any barriers holding them back. Most of the times, those are unanswered questions, especially for the students. The students sometimes those questions are related with the subject, sometimes with the program, sometimes with the school, sometimes with the university, and sometimes outside of it. And my teaching philosophy has always been, and I always tell this to the students during the first class, my teaching philosophy is, if you want to progress with anything, and especially if you come to this class and you want to learn and develop, if there are questions and you don't have answers to, and they spiral in your brain and you can't pay attention, I don't want that. I want you to be successful. So you, if it's perfectly fine with everybody, then we can do it so that it helps everyone and we speak it publicly. Or if it's a question that you would like to share just with me, I can help you during the break. But for me, people experience like a slowing down their progress because the question, I don't have the answer. As a teacher, my philosophy is, if I can help removing or giving answers, or at least guiding them to the answer, then their learning and their development goes faster. So that's my shortcut. It's very universal. And I do two things. I inspire and encourage. Inspire, encourage, inspire, and them to reveal those questions that they are stuck with.
So next, talk about what is this thing called the STIBE method? What's that all about?
Yeah, so the STIBE method is this collection of tools that I have together with my media lab from Canada, from Germany, from Latvia, from many other countries, from Finland, have been developing over the years. And it's a tool set. And it started with understanding that behavioral change fails so many times that I became so curious, how can we make it sustain itself? So many studies, just you run something, you let the people do something different, and then you stop that intervention, and then they roll back to where they were, and even worse. And I was like, that's not sustainable. It's unsustainable. And over time, we collected some of the insights from already established social scientists, and they became the tools in a tool set. So there is a transformation design framework, and that has 8 tools. It starts with some of the tools from the deeper science, from social sciences, and then goes over to the work that we added, which helps to design technology-driven technologies or systems that give instant feedback loops that remove the attitudinal barriers. Just like with the salespeople of the CRM system, they see other actually have no problem. Okay, we don't have problem too. And then there were some other more of a universal, like a guiding tools that were added on top of those, which is more introductory and can be used without technologies. And that whole paradigm that starts with the fact that we better understand how human change works, then we for technologies that is helping us to human behavior in the organization, or method as an overarching term, which encompasses these.
How long did it take you to come up with this process? I'm guessing this is like a lifelong journey. I'm sure just like didn't wake up one day and it's in your brain. Like it's a lifelong journey, right?
It's a lifelong. My first self-driven behavior change happened when I was around 14 to 15 years young. I was overweight. And by the way, there are some talks on online that has all my childhood pictures. I have had this problem with the weight management all my life. So currently I do one meal a day. That helps me to also maintain to be in shape so I can eat anything I want. So the first one, I just decided, well, I'm unhappy. I'm not happy with this body that is big and round, and people look at me differently. Pretty simple thing, but I did it at the age of 15. And after 3 weeks, I was out of my regular place where I lived. I was in a summer camp, which means I'm away from the kitchen, which is full with the jam and white bread and everything. And also, I decided after lunch to go. We had 1 hour. I just went to the stadium and ran 3 kilometers. Nothing special, but my parents visited me after 3 weeks, and luckily I had this kind of rubber things that holds the shorts, so they don't fall down. And ever since I paid attention, one way or the other, how the change works in myself, in others, and I paid attention. The same as I started to work as a customer relationship manager, development, business development. It was all about how you interact with others, how you get the other people to realize what change would help them to succeed in their work, and how to get them to make that decision that if they get this service or that product, it would help their organization to perform better, and actually that would make them feel better. And those are changes that happen on these multiple levels. And yeah, at one point I was working, so I did 2 master degrees, computer science and MBA. Then I worked for industry, in IT industry, in marketing and advertising, building the early websites. And after more than a decade in industry, I realized there's something more I would like to do. And then I asked myself, okay, what it is. And then I found, by Googling at that time, I didn't have the more sophisticated AI. I found this persuasive technology. I was like, oh, you can design technologies that are influencing human behavior and attitude. I want to learn.
So you've done a lot of stuff in your life so far. What's something that can be something major, something really small you don't know about? What's one thing that you're really proud of that you've accomplished so far?
I am really proud that I can help myself to keep this useful, valuable, meaningful knowledge and tools that, when told to the others, make a positive impact to them. And it can be individuals, it can be organizations, it can be societies. And I'm proud that I'm continue having fun and having really good times and enjoying not only doing it myself, but doing collaboratively. As you can imagine, doctoral students, master students, researchers, we sometimes we really enjoy that. And when we discover kind of a simple thing, but it makes such a great difference, because it's so easy now to explain it to the industry and show, if you introduce new things to your organization, it's a new knowledge and you expect people to behave, but they don't. And you think, oh, let's motivate them. Let's give some punishments or some encouragements, the carrots and rewards and all of those things. And no, the answer is you just help them to move from knowledge to seeing that knowledge being relevant, meaningful, accepting it. And sometimes they accept, oh yeah, that's kind of, yeah, it makes sense. But then help them to place that new knowledge into their daily routine somewhere. Build that intention. Here, I will use it. Here, it will be helpful. Then you will see the behavior happening. And that's a knowledge behavior gap model we published 3 years ago. It wasn't there before. Everybody was like, and I was like, why nobody did that? Now we did it. Now it's one of the greatest useful tools that we are using for the science and also for the industry.
So next, talk about an opportunity that you were given in the past, but you were not able to take advantage of. Right? Either it wasn't the right timing, you weren't interested, but now you're like, man, I should have took advantage of this opportunity I was given, but for whatever reason, you just didn't have time for it.
I don't know how to answer this. That ask me differently. They say, what are the things that you regret? And well, I don't know what and why and how in my personality has been developing, but no regrets. And the same way, I cannot. I think maybe the memory just erases that because of the same reasons, not to think about it or burn the bridge with that information. I don't think. I think the last one was just like a choices, and that was very early when I was given the chance to 25 years ago to go and from my previous job to be more like located in Central Europe and represent the embassies of Republic of Latvia and be like a technical person, which was a great next step after being in your home country. But then the other person said, "Oh no, just stay with us. We have this marketing and advertising company, and we have this website development, and we have the restructuring, and you might become suddenly from just a programmer and project manager the manager of this, and we will just cover the rest of the things." And I was like, okay, that's kind of this movie or the sliding doors or something, like which way you went. And that's the kind of maybe the last point where I still considered maybe 20 years ago as a fork in my life. But after that, I would rather say if somebody has offered me lessons in playing piano and I would turn that down, I would possibly regret that. But that never happened.
Funny. So you did a LinkedIn post recently. It says one of the best parts of education at our MIT University of Vietnam is what we call work integrated learning. What is this work integrated learning you're talking about?
Yeah, work integrated learning means that in our, especially the final courses in the third year of the digital marketing program, and also some of the courses of the second year, we have companies coming into our challenge that they have on a day-to-day basis. Also at our MIT, we have special units maintaining these relationships with the industry partners. So, and they are very active, and some of the partners are our alumni, and that's also great. What's the benefit for the students is not only they learn the material and tools and frameworks, but they immediately apply that to the challenge that is brought in the end. And if, for example, I'm a course coordinator for a course called Contemporary Issues in Digital Marketing. So students learn a lot of tools that is helping to innovate, and their outcome, the third assignment, is a group presentation marketing innovation proposal for the challenge that the company has brought in the first week, coming in saying, we currently work with one of the mobile app developers, and they have a few apps, and there's a recent app, and they want that app to be more successful. And of course, what we want from the apps, not only the more active users, but also more active paying users. So conversion that. And again, that's kind of a very universal challenge. I think most of the app developers would like to have that. And it's a specific niche, and that's a given to the students. The students work. And in the end, and again, what it represents is open innovation. So company comes in, what the benefit for the company sees presentations. They don't watch all of them. We kind of pre-filter, but then there is the 5 top ones that will be the pitching session. So there will be top 5 teams with the top proposals presenting back to that client. And the client listens and asks the questions. And I tell to the students, you may suggest something in your proposal as a deliverable for your assignment, but that's something that if you are successful, might show up in that app after half a year. And if you might have what you wanted. And I think that's so powerful. It's just very directly integrated with what's happening in the industry.
Can you talk about some of your own, like your own personal, professional goals for yourself moving forward? Like, what do you want to see yourself like in 5, 10 years? Like, you want to be, I don't know, like, hey, I don't know, the VP of business at, Berkeley, Cal University. Like, what's your goals for yourself?
So this will be very unordinary answer. I'm so immune to the labels, and that has been into my life. I grew up in Soviet Union. Soviet Union, there was just one label. It's a party and the flag and something else. And even when I remember, even my classmates, when there was the first possibility to get the jeans, the trousers, jeans, I was like, I don't need those. And here is the same. And maybe what was really helpful, because I was at MIT. So MIT is #1 university. It wasn't at that time, it was still competing with Harvard and Oxford, because of them being still very powerful, but technologies take over. it's sorry guys. So it's MIT #1 now. And my challenge to myself, and I don't know where this will bring me in 5 to 10 years, but I want to be in a place where I am able, this, first of all, translate the observations in societies into scientific questions and discoveries. And when those scientific questions and discoveries are done and new knowledge is created, then translate it back to the average person who has a problem or challenge in life. So they would see the relevance and meaningfulness of that new knowledge to such a simple level. They would be like, oh, this is what I understand. No, this is what I need. And I understand what it is. And I can use it and I can apply it. And I'm so happy that I would be able to tell about this to my friends. And why I have arrived to this point, and it's very difficult to do that. It simultaneously became to my awareness because many communicators or many people that have something to propose, and let's just take a smaller niche, which is let's say trainers or coaches or consultants. When we look to LinkedIn, Facebook, there's huge amount. And those who know the red ocean and the blue ocean, they know this is red ocean. You just come in and you try to compete.
Yeah, in my opinion, there's like one too many coaches out there.
Exactly. And I always had this personality. If everybody runs that direction, I'm going to go the other direction. And now, because I can do the same as them. And many people ask me, why don't you do it? I'm not interested. And I have evidence that although my website, it looks more like a warehouse storage of stuff, you can get the links and everything. And the YouTube channel also is dormant for some time, but there are some good stuff that is still relevant and valid. And I put my challenge, set the challenge for myself. How can I condense or design the things that I have discovered in such a way that a person who has a challenge looks at what I have done and they just say, oh yeah, that makes sense and that's relevant and I'm going to use it and then I'm going to tell my friends. I don't want to go in the red ocean and use the Facebook ads or anything. That's too trivial for me. So the challenge is how can I arrive to that wisdom, knowledge, and maybe even the process. And maybe that's where I would be like, okay. And then if I have that master, keep repeating that.
And how long have you lived here in Vietnam?
It's the second year now.
Second year. And you came specifically for the job, or you came because you want to live in Vietnam? Talk about that story.
Oh yeah, this is a simple answer. As academia typically requires people to move around, especially if you want to accelerate your, and that also, I think, also was happening with me in the industry. So one way, the quickest way to be promoted is to move around. And when I realized that after 6 years in Paris and 2 French business schools, I knew that I have reached the maximum that I could have, like a exponential growth in that setting, I realized, and there was a one story or one event from the second French business school. It had collaboration with the University of Massachusetts in Boston. And they sent me to teach a course from end February to beginning of April, 6 weeks. And I arrived to UMass Boston, and everything was fine. And every person, the teachers and program managers said, but don't plan any teaching in the if March, the mid-March. This is the student's going to go to Florida. And they've been repeating this, all the students going to go to Florida. And then I remember, I have a good friend, my mentor, Mike, he is in Florida. I'm going to go to Florida. I think it turned out that I'm the only one who went to Florida and all the students stay there. But you might know that winters in Boston are quite severe. It's really cold, especially end of February. And then suddenly mid-March, and I happen to be the same country, and there is like a minus 15 Celsius in Boston, and there's plus 20 Celsius in Florida. And it don't ever change the place of my university. There are universities everywhere. So I intentionally applied to the universities that are not far from the equator. So that was my strategy. And I've got two proposals. The other one was also from not far. It was from Middle East, but this was more in alignment with myself. So yes, and I strongly believe we as scientists and creators, it's not that much important where exactly in which university we are, unless it's a good condition, um, place to work, which is here because it's also Australian in Vietnam. Then the rest is you can and you distribute and you communicate. So, and I love to be in Vietnam.
So I'm sure before you decided to move here, like you did a research, you went on the internet, Google stuff, like did all that kind of stuff. But once you got here, what's something that surprised you, right? Like you didn't know about Vietnam. Okay, this is nowhere in the papers. Google, what about this, man? This is really nice. I really like this by Vietnam.
Collectivism. Well, for me, it's a little bit easier to relate because I said I grew up in Soviet Union. I have I can read the situations a little better than the people who never were related to those. The example is this. I ride a motorbike here, like basic one, like many million of other people here. And the traffic is with
That's a nice way to put it. That's a very politically correct way to put it.
And here it is. At the beginning, I didn't know how it works. And I could suggest if somebody wants to start riding a motorbike here, you come and you initially call for these motorbike taxis and sit at the back and see how they ride through the traffic. You learn by observational learning, one of the foundations of social learning theory as well. And I learned that. And I rode a motorbike when I was in my adolescent years. So now when I see somebody left turn across 7 lanes, if that happens in Europe, everybody would be, depends on the country. If a Latin country, they would, oh, what's going on? If it would be like a German or maybe somebody, oh, maybe beeping or like very frustrated. Here, you just beep so that the person knows that you see the person and you're not gonna ride over them. Yeah. That means there is the beeping is the communication so that we see each other and we're not gonna do harm. So it's a communication of that. And if that's happening, that means all the collective other 279 riders are just letting that person to make the left turn, because if you're gonna need it, everybody else will do it for you. That's so fascinating, and it just works.
Yeah, one thing is like I've been riding the back of a grab bike since I've been here. One thing I notice now, you can quickly notice like what motorbike or what person of flow, they do collective things, and then you see, okay, this person, what the hell is this person doing? Like they're doing something like not in the flow, or good now, right?
just to continue your story is but are exceptions, and then there are these people with the hoodies and with the glasses, and they are covered like this in this movie, The Invisible Person or something. I don't judge. There are differences in the sunlight and everything, and in the polluted air as well. But those riders are not shifting as they sit.
They're usually like on the right hand lane, going like 30 miles an hour, real slow. They're not weaving in and out stuff.
So by their outfit, that this is their riding style, and that's fine with them and fine with everyone else, because if you see them, you know what to expect, which means nothing. There will be a straight line, and then you see that the other people just see other ones. It's amazing. I just went on holidays recently, and of course, when you happen to be in another country where they ride on the left side, and the other challenge is you realize you are not anymore the majority in the cars, and the cars don't pay attention to you. And I got that very strong revelation. I have to be careful, because here in Vietnam, I can ride and I know the other people will see me. But when I went to that place and it wasn't busy, but I realized, no. If I want to survive, I need to pay attention.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm on a motorbike. I like, there's no way we can fit through these two trucks. Well, I guess you fit through the two trucks, right?
Yes, so it's well, again, I've learned that they introduced more, enforced more higher penalties for breaking the traffic laws and everything.
Yeah, I went on a tour of the Mekong Delta yesterday, and the tour guy was telling us that, like, what do you say, like before BND, now it's 46 million. And he said in the past, like, you get a ticket, you just give the ticket and leave. But now, especially for like a driving, running red lights, riding on sidewalks, and going down the one way, the wrong way, you got to pay $6 million VND, and they take your ticket, your license from you, and you lose for 6 months. You got the whole process all over again, right?
Yes.
So as you see, saying some people are like, like, man, that's too strict, that's too whatever. But still, like, man, driving down the sidewalk, that's kind of, insane. But I don't know. So I have to see how that works out for everyone, I guess. I think it's a lot. How they republicize it, right? Does the average man in Ho Chi Minh City know this is coming, right? Like,
they already had the big change with limiting the drinking driving, and that, I don't know exactly, but that has been already at least for a year. And that reminds me about exactly what happened with Latvia when Latvia got independent from Soviet Union. The culture that was still present was like, it was fine. You just, cars were not that many, the speeds were not that high, and maybe the process wasn't that
be like,
and over time, with the social campaigns, with all the effort, with increasing the fines, it happened. And it's just now it's unacceptable if somebody just randomly in that culture decides just after, I don't know, unacceptable amount, just puts that idea as possibility. Everybody else will stop down the person. It's a cultural shift. And I think, well, yeah, comparatively, those things arrive also here, and the same happened with limiting the drinking recently, and now with all the traffic. And again, we can always have endless debate, but we know that if there is more order in a traffic, it's minimize the risks.
Yeah. So let's suppose you have a family member come here or a good friend come to visit here in Vietnam. Is there a certain place, like your go-to place to take people, either here in Ho Chi Minh City or Vietnam, when people come visit you?
I haven't explored enough the Vietnam myself, and there are still many places I haven't been. But the one place I've been is up to the Ha Long Bay, the bay with.
Yeah, I heard that's so beautiful up there. But I heard it's like over tourism right now. I heard like it's like tourists are like kind of like ruin it, sort of so to speak.
I don't know if anything can be ruined if you go on these, let's say, cruise ships through those rocky hills, and it's just so different. I've seen in some of the videos that there are not familiar maybe, but if we speak about Vietnam, that's when I saw like a top 10 things to see, that was the number one for
Yeah.
me. There are caves, but I'm not personally interested in caves, but the
Yeah.
water, nature, the cliffs, and you were
Yeah.
among them, and especially staying on that cruise for a night.
Mhm.
So the sunset, sunrise, everything, that's a must.
Yeah. I came to the world. I didn't want to see that. And I guess it's some kind of train that goes from here to Hanoi. It's like a 12-hour train, overnight train. I kind of want to do that too.
Yeah, beaches. One of my friends will now come over in the next 2 weeks, and will stay here for 6 weeks for kiteboarding. Like one of the best places to enjoy that. So he's gonna come over snowboarding, and I think kiteboarding would be like an equivalent the summer, let's say, alternative. But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
So what do you have all this stuff going on? What do you do like for fun to take care of yourself?
Back in other countries, the more Nordic countries where I spent most of my life, it was ice hockey. Here in Vietnam, besides the glasses where you get ice, there is just one there is just one place mark 81, and the ground floor they have like a rink, which is like a square with a pole in the middle. Quality, of course, but last year, year 2023, I have my birthday in December, and back in it's called Painful Puck. I invite my friends. It's a light ice hockey, no gear because you cannot get for everybody. I have just two colors of jersey, white and red, resembling the Latvian flag. And then we just see of 2 hours, and now because the crowd gets bigger with the families and kids, sometimes it gets up to 80 people including kids, so we have some kids game, and then we have like a more like a guy meals and other entertainment. Here the only thing I could do with the friends that I have met here was invite to that one square and let them skate, and quite many of them the first time in their lives, and it was also interesting.
Nice. So what are some things you're working on for 2025, either personally, professionally, that you would like really want to like focus on and do well at in 2025?
Comes back to the same answer as that's my mind goes like this. It's if I have a challenge for whatever reason, I refer to the movie Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio, and there is this scene where one person says, I think maybe it was him, as parasite. Everybody like, and the answer is idea. If you have an idea, it will make its way out of your head one way or the other. And the same is with me. No matter traveling, exploring, science, and everything. Foundational quest is how can I convert the knowledge and the revelations that I have had so far and will have into easy to communicate, to place in the awareness of the people so that they can take it, use it, benefit, and tell others. And that's something that I hope.
In the Seattle area, I'm pretty involved with tech startups in Seattle, right? And there's a monthly event called New Tech Northwest, right? And so the only thing I like about it, at the beginning, the guy, Brett Green, he'll say, hey, if you're looking for a job, stand up and like, tell your job. Like 5 years ago, maybe 40 people stand up. I'm looking 40 people stand up and say, hey, I'm looking to hire software developers, right? It's like there was so many open and empty software developer jobs, right? No one would fill them. Now, 5 years now go forward. Now the same thing, same meaning now. I think it's for amount of time, 5 years, we went to this can be filled, and now either the jobs are filled or like there's this thing in Berkeley, Stanford, getting a computer science degree, can't find a job. And it's like, I think part of it is AI. I think part of it, I like software out of the market, right? Because I know a lot of people like, hey, I got a 6 month coding degree. I need $150,000. Well, I work for Amazon, right? So what's your take on that? Do you think software developers, another thing too, I think software developers, in my mind, they're more like tradesmen, right? They're more like plumbers and like electricians, right? Instead of like, how to put this, like, I think they're more like tradespeople versus, I think they're more blue collar than the white collar.
It's very interesting how AI, with the possibility to code, now disrupts the whole mainstream kind of visible increase of coders, how that is disrupting and changing. And in some way, it kind of that there are these waves of something becoming very popular, and then it transforms into something else, and then it requires people to reconsider what's what else, or what is more. An example, one of my doctoral students, and for doctoral students at the beginning, especially if they have experience in industry, they have difficulty to see the difference between, do I solve the problem directly, which is the industry approach, or the scientific approach? Do I create a knowledge that is replicable, generalizable, and will help many others to solve something better? And I say, if you want to pick a topic which will not become redundant in the coming years, which is somewhat illustrating software developers, then there has to be two components. One is foundational, which is eternal, which will never change or will be always important, let's say so, which will not lose its importance. And the other that potentially can evolve and change. And that's the way also how I see my work. So my work is technology and people. And people is this eternal component in that, and understanding how human change works. And then technologies, which will always evolve and which will always can be changing. And that's why I rely that engineers will do their best. And I switched from being computer scientist and MBA into more of a, almost like a behavioral scientist that understands, it has the fluency in technology, so I can translate. So the same way, for all the people, it's how well you have developed yourself with that one eternal component. What component in your self-development is that will never get out of the importance? And if that balance is, then it's good. But if it's just purely, okay, I've learned this one programming language, it's still, the mindset is trained to know what the programming language means. So there's a very good chances to fluently switch from one to another. But then if the whole thing becomes inaccessible, then yes,
Yes. So is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't, or anything else you want to talk about?
Well, we have covered so many topics that, well, I think, yeah, maybe just to give example of what is simplest, that's the easiest, that everyone can start doing it at any time. And I would like to use the opportunity, if anyone would benefit from it and will change their lives, I would be happy about this. So usually I need two items for that. Well, these are quite similar. Maybe, let's see what I can, because it can be, oh yeah, typically I use one of the items as this, and the other is, if you could just give me back maybe the pen that I brought you as a gift. Yes, so we can do some advertisement. So let's say a person says that, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So the person can live daily life with a thought, and the thought can be, I cannot imagine what will I do if there will be no demand for software developers, if the person is a software developer. I don't know what I will do. I don't know what will I do, or I cannot imagine. And if the person lives with this, a person is stuck. So that means all the choice to that. So the recipe is, it has to be the complete opposite, which means if this is, I cannot imagine, What will I do? This should be, I can imagine. And over time, why this recipe of the complete opposite is so important, because then they cannot coexist. Because otherwise, that would be the example of madness. So you simultaneously believe in the opposites. And as I told previously, most of the people make the typical, very common, very human mistake. This is, I cannot imagine what I will gonna do. And this is, let me try imagining. Let me try is a different animal. They can coexist. And then sometimes after a year or two, and there is this time when the company restructures and played off, then and loses the kind of and gives up the new one. So opposite means they cannot coexist, so the new one pushes out the old one. And again, it might seem so trivial, and many people might think, well, it's too trivial, it must not be working, or I don't believe that it's going to work because it's so trivial. And again, that's an example. I don't believe that it's working because it's so trivial. I believe that it's working because it's so trivial. And this is so simple, so easy at the same time, so easy to navigate inner voices saying, no, 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 it's not going to work for me. But well, this is the journey, and this is the recipe that works.
Nice. Hey, can you share your social media or emails or whatever so people can reach out to you?
Yes, very easy. I have a website, which is my name, surname.com, agnestype.com. It is, as I said, it's a warehouse, but also it has all the links to my YouTube channel, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere I am using my name, surname. So it can be facebook.com/agnestype, LinkedIn/in/agnestype, Instagram/agnestype. Welcome. I mostly do my professional communication on LinkedIn. The others are for fun. But again, you never know. Time will tell.
Yes. So before we get out of here, can you give us any wisdom or advice or anything you want to talk about?
I think the wisdom is knowing that nothing fundamentally is wrong with human nature. It's very good. It's serving us very well. It has its own peculiarities. And the better we allow ourselves to befriend and to be more aware of what it is, which means yourself, not yourself, your name, surname, and language and passport, but yourself is your physiological counterpart that empowers and enables to be and to think and everything. And the more you allow yourself and to be okay with it, including all the darkness like procrastination as an example, or just hesitation or maybe doubts or anything, but you are okay with that and you are not over judging yourself, but befriending all of the aspects, including this, also the human hesitant and dark ones, then you become more of a mastering your existence rather than being a victim of the human nature as it's has been evolving.
Thanks, Agnes. Thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Happy to be and happy to communicate.
Yes. And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. And remember to be great every day.